You won't believe my sister tried to get a free teenager to do her chores. For simplicity, I'll call her Zoe. She and her husband Jack have 2 great kids of their own, my niece and nephew, who are genuinely sweet and never give her much trouble. About 2 years ago, I moved in with Zoe and Jack for a while, hoping to help out and deepen our family bond. Instead, it turned into a living nightmare. Almost as soon as I settled in, Zoe hit me with an ultimatum. She'd found a higher-paying job and expected me to hand over nearly half my paycheck every month, or else I had to pack up and leave. Being kicked out felt harsh, but I couldn't stomach being treated like a walking ATM. When I finally moved out, she immediately started complaining nonstop about having no backup and never getting a break from the kids. I did pitch in occasionally. I love my niece and nephew, but I made it crystal clear that my days off didn't turn me into her personal housekeeper or live-in nanny. So imagine my shock when she floated this idea: I want to foster a teenager. Not as a way to give a kid in need a loving home, she explained, but so she'd have basically free help. Zoe pictured some 16 or 17-year-old, fresh out of a tough situation, pitching in around the house, doing chores, cooking meals, maybe even entertaining the kids, all while she and Jack snuck off for date nights. Her exact words were something like, "They'll be so grateful, they won't complain, they'll share a room with our son or crash in the garage. And they're used to hardship, so they'll love having a real bed." I was horrified. The idea of turning a vulnerable kid into unpaid labor felt exploitative. I tried to explain that fostering means caring for a child's emotional and physical needs first, not outsourcing your chores. But Zoe wouldn't hear it. She was already imagining her ideal helper. Frankly, I was stunned that she could reduce a teenager's life to a few hours of free housework and babysitting. It made me question everything. Was this really about giving a kid a home, or just about padding her own convenience? I couldn't stay silent after that. Am I the bad one for calling her out on this scheme? Turning someone's life into unpaid labor isn't just selfish, it's straight up manipulative. Sometimes, entitlement knows no limits. Now imagine this: homemade cookies, with a special twist. But when a kid almost got a taste, things went from chill to chaos in seconds. Kid snags my secret weed cookies and sparks a family meltdown. Did I really mess up by leaving my homemade cannabis cookies out where anyone could grab them? It was my day off, so I thought I'd spend the morning baking a fresh batch of weed-infused treats. These weren't your average chocolate chips, they had real cannabis extract mixed right into the dough so I could unwind with the occasional snack. Just after I'd finished tidying up the kitchen, the doorbell rang, and I went to see who it was. Guess who's standing there? My sister, hauling along her 8-year-old daughter. Plate still balanced in her arms, my niece made a beeline for the counter as soon as she spotted my cookies. I darted after her, and by the time I rounded the corner into the kitchen, I'd snatched the cookie away before she could even taste it. My sister absolutely lost it, accusing me of being irresponsible for having pot cookies where a kid could reach them. She argued I can't expect no children to ever drop in. After all, I'm a single guy with no kids of my own. She demanded to know if there was anything normal to eat that wasn't laced, though by that point it was too late anyway. I pointed out that none of this would have happened if I'd known they were coming over unannounced. She shot back, calling me a huge, irresponsible bad, and I reminded her that I never would have left those cookies out if I'd had a heads up about her visit. Then she went on about how the very first thing her daughter did was try to steal a cookie, like the real problem was me, not the fact that her parents hadn't set any ground rules. Honestly, even if those were just plain old cookies, I shouldn't have to jump through hoops to cater to someone dropping by without warning. Sometimes, being unannounced isn't just inconvenient, it's downright dangerous. One small slip could turn into a massive mistake. Next up, we shift from cookies to courtrooms. What happens when your ex weaponizes social media against you? This next guy decided to fight back and win. I took my YouTuber ex to court and crippled her channel. I was in a year-long relationship with a fellow YouTuber who treated our channel like it was their first priority, and I often felt neglected and unimportant. After we broke up, I assumed life would move on, but a few months later I started getting frantic messages from their friends urging me to check out their latest video. Reluctantly, I watched and saw they'd painted me as an emotionally abusive ex, encouraging viewers to vilify me and even wish me harm. Overwhelmed by the flood of hateful comments and convinced this smear campaign could wreck my life, I decided to file a lawsuit. I knew it would be costly and that my ex was already strapped for cash, but I'd sunk a fair amount into the case as well and felt I had to stand my ground. The proceedings dragged on, with my ex posting videos about crippling legal fees and pleading for mercy, while friends on both sides urged me to drop it. I refused. When the judge finally ruled in my favor, I didn't get a cent, but the public court records allowed me to post the official outcome in the comments of every video where my ex had smeared me. Almost overnight, their viewership plummeted and they pointed the finger at me for ruining their career. Despite the backlash, I felt justified. Actions have consequences, and if you weaponize an audience to destroy someone's reputation, you should be ready for a fight. Friends have told me I went too far, arguing that I should have simply let the legal process play out and moved on. But as a content creator myself, I know how damaging a viral narrative can be, and I wasn't about to sit by while someone used influencer status to rally hate against me. So here I am, still riding the fallout. Am I really the bad? Sometimes, you've got to defend your name, especially when it's dragged through the mud for clicks and views. Now we move from viral drama to a meltdown in a coffee shop. All it took was one loud grinder and a crying baby to send tempers flaring. I snapped at a barista over my crying baby. Am I the bad guy? I never expected my leisurely afternoon stroll with my 9-month-old daughter to end in me losing my cool in a coffee shop. Yesterday, I wandered into the cafe that just reopened near our house, hoping for a quiet latte while my little one napped in her stroller. Even though the shop wasn't packed, only 3 baristas were on duty, so service crawled along, and that alone wouldn't have bothered me. What threw me off was the grinding machine. The moment I stepped in, its roar hit me like a freight train. They didn't just pause it for a moment, it rumbled non-stop because one of the baristas was blitzing through a giant bag of beans. Within 60 seconds, my daughter stirred, then burst into tears despite all my soothing. After a few minutes of her crying, I politely asked the barista to pause the grinder since it was waking her up, and she kindly obliged, turning the thing off. I finally got her drifting back to sleep while I waited for my drink, only for the grinder to kick on again a minute later, jolting her awake and turning her tears into full-on wails. That was it for me. I raised my voice, telling the barista she could clearly see her machine was upsetting my baby and asking her not to start it again while we were still there. She explained she had an urgent task with the grinder, but I couldn't fathom why she couldn't wait until we'd left. The rest of the staff treated me like I'd done something wrong, handing over my coffee without so much as a word. Frustrated, I emailed the manager once I got home to explain exactly what happened, and today he replied with an apology and reassurance they'd address the issue. On top of that, he sent me a gift card as a goodwill gesture. I told my husband, expecting him to applaud the free coffee, but he thinks I went too far by involving management and overreacted in the moment. Still, the manager agreed I was in the right. Now I'm torn. Did I truly cross the line by demanding a grinder stay off for the sake of my daughter's nap? Not every situation calls for an outburst, but sometimes, when enough is enough, you just let it out. Next, we've got a story of loyalty and sacrifice. When you're forced to choose between family and the one thing that's always been there for you, the choice isn't always so clear. I quit my mom's new life to stay with my dog. You won't believe why. I lost my dad in a workplace accident when I was 15, and now at 17 I'm still trying to find my footing. About a year ago, my mom started dating a guy named Sebastian, and they recently got engaged. Sebastian was all in on adopting another dog, but my mom turned out to be allergic and freaked out. She flat out told me we had to rehome Dax, no discussion, just give him away. We argued so much about it that I actually broke down and cried more than once. Nobody wanted to adopt Dax, so I begged my grandpa on my dad's side to take him in. Grandpa, who's always been there for me, didn't hesitate and said yes right away. He walks Dax every day, makes sure he's fed, and handles all his vet visits like a pro. Since no one else could offer Dax the care he needs, I told my mom I was moving in with Grandpa so my best friend wouldn't be alone. She lost it, saying she and Sebastian deserved a clean slate and that I needed to stop living in the past. She insisted I get over losing my dad and quit acting like Dax was the only family I've got left. So last week, I packed up my stuff, Uncle drove me to Grandpa's place, and the second Dax saw me he went absolutely wild. It hit me that he missed me just as much as I missed him. Even now, my mom keeps begging me to come back and calling me cruel for choosing my dog over her and Sebastian. But if she and Sebastian get to pursue their happiness, why can't Dax and I have ours? Am I bad for choosing a dog I've had since I was 10 over a brand new fiancé and a fresh start? When you love something that much, sometimes you've got to walk away from everything else just to keep it. Now, from loyalty to limits, when family takes advantage of your kindness, sometimes the only answer is the door, and a firm goodbye. I booted my sister's kids from my house, you won't believe why. I'm a 34-year-old guy who doesn't have any children and honestly prefers a peaceful home. My sister, on the other hand, is 31 and juggling life with 3 kids aged between 5 and 9. We've never been close, and I usually steer clear of her little ones since I'm not much of a kid person. Then one evening, she unexpectedly showed up at my place with her kids in tow, claiming her husband had been in an accident and she needed me to watch them while she rushed to the hospital. I told her she ought to find a babysitter, but she insisted there was no time to line one up. When I stood firm and declined, she threatened to leave them there, prompting me to warn I'd call child services if she dared. Caught between my principles and not wanting to provide my neighbors with crying kids, I reluctantly gave in. At first, things went okay, the kids were lively but manageable, and they ate dinner without turning it into a food fight. I retreated to my study with my cat and dog, hoping to get some work done while they watched a movie. Suddenly I heard a crash and raced back to find my antique mantel clock shattered on the floor, a family heirloom worth well over $1,000. I was livid and demanded an explanation. The eldest said they'd just been inspecting it, and the younger two erupted into wails blaming each other for the damage. That was the last straw, so I called my brother-in-law and told him to come collect his children immediately. He arrived but lectured me on family loyalty before finally taking the kids away. The next morning, my parents and relatives bombarded me with calls, accusing me of being heartless and caring more about a clock than my niece and nephews. I calmly replied that I fully stood by my decision and that they should be grateful I didn't make my sister and her husband replace the clock themselves. I know it may sound harsh, but to me, respecting boundaries and safeguarding personal property matters just as much as family ties. So, did I go too far, or was I justified in kicking her kids out? Setting boundaries isn't always easy, but sometimes, enough is enough. If they can't respect your space, maybe they shouldn't be in it. Next, we dive into a story of fate and loyalty. What do you do when you find a lost companion, and its past comes back to claim it? I kept a lost show dog, should I return her? The answer will surprise you. I struggle with depression and anxiety, and my dog isn't just a pet, she's officially my emotional support companion. Honestly, she's the brightest spot in my entire day. A few weeks ago, I joined a Facebook community dedicated to the rare purebred my dog belongs to. I shared a photo of her in that group, thinking fellow fans would love it. Before long, someone tagged a woman who then slid into my DMs. She claimed the dog was hers, thanked me for rescuing her, and asked how she could come pick her up. She even offered to compensate me for taking such good care of her dog. At first I was skeptical, she lived coast to coast, so I figured it might be a scam until she sent me a bunch of old photos and videos. With my dog's one-of-a-kind markings, it was obviously the same pup in her pictures. She explained that her dog had been a show champion, trained in obedience, agility, and a handful of other disciplines I'd never heard of. The dog carried a shelf full of fancy titles, proof of that early training. It was clear she'd been doted on, expertly trained, and deeply cherished. The woman said her home burned down last year, and during the chaos her dog bolted and disappeared. Nobody knows how the dog traveled hundreds of miles or what happened between her escape and the day my friend found her. All the while, the original owner never gave up the search. She even had a video from when the dog was a tiny puppy getting microchipped. For some reason neither the shelter nor my vet ever detected that chip, but it definitely existed at one point. Here's where I might be the bad. I told her I genuinely admired everything she'd done for those first few years of the dog's life. At 5 years old, this dog has been through a lot, and I felt terrible about her past trauma, but I just couldn't hand her over. She's my support animal, and I honestly can't imagine life without her by my side. I even offered to send weekly updates and photos, but that only made her more hostile. Soon my inbox was flooded with angry messages from people I'd never met. Every notification sparked a panic attack, since her friends treated me like I'd stolen the dog on purpose. I reminded myself that neither fate nor I chose this dog's journey, just like neither of us chose how her former owner lost her. Eventually I blocked them, because the harassment never stopped. Since the shelter held the dog for the required week with no microchip detected, I formally adopted her and consider her mine now. Legally I'm in the clear, but I keep wondering, am I morally in the wrong? I know she truly loved that dog and wants her back, but I can't picture my life without that loyal companion. It wouldn't be a life where I'm happy, anyway. If technology let me, I'd clone her in a heartbeat and hand one over, problem solved. So am I the bad for prioritizing my mental health and keeping her, given that the law says she's mine? That's today's dilemma. Feel free to let me know what you think. When someone becomes part of your life, it's hard to imagine letting them go even if their past comes knocking. Now, imagine pouring your heart and soul into restoring a classic car, only to find out it's been hauled off to the scrapyard. This next one? It's a gut punch. She scrapped my 1968 Impala, so I sued her. I'm left wondering if I'm the bad for taking my girlfriend to court after she hauled off my beloved 1968 Impala project to the scrapyard. I'll keep the backstory brief. Back in February 2024, I scooped up a four-door 1968 Impala with the dream of restoring it to showroom condition. Fast forward to a few months ago, I finally closed on my first house, complete with a 2.5-car garage, perfect for my restoration hobby. I rolled the Impala inside and began dismantling it piece by piece, stashing the body in one bay, the chassis in another, and littering every shelf with parts. Then my girlfriend moved in amid all this chaos, and from day one she made it clear she absolutely despised that car sitting in our garage. She wanted her vehicle to park under that roof instead, even though my 2 acres have shady trees for parking, plus a barn if she really needed cover. I told her flat out that it was my property, my project, and I couldn't just reassemble the thing overnight. Then I jetted off on a short business trip for the local company I work for. When I returned, she was all smiles, cooking meals, doing chores, and generally acting like a dream tenant. It wasn't until I noticed her car missing from its usual spot that my heart started racing. I asked where she parked so I could tend the lawn beneath it, and she said, "Don't worry, it's in the garage." Curious, I went to check and discovered she'd hired movers to clear out every part of the Impala, from the drivetrain and body panels to the chassis, and haul it all off to the dump and scrapyard. I was absolutely floored. My year and a half of sweat equity and more than $12,000 in parts and services were gone in a single afternoon. Furious, I told her I'd be filing in small claims court, but she brushed me off as if I was overreacting. That night I told her our relationship was finished and asked her to pack her things and leave. Despite my anger, I enlisted a lawyer, armed with every receipt and security cam clip of her letting the crew in and watching them take it all, so I'm confident I'll prevail. Her friends and family have been on my case, calling it just an old junker and saying I should let it go, but after investing so much time, effort, and money into that car, I'm determined to see justice done. So Reddit, tell me straight, am I the bad here? When you spend years building something with your own hands, it's not just metal and paint, it's a part of you. And now, we switch gears from classic cars to cutting-edge tech. When one kid builds his dream gaming rig, his aunt decides it's fair game. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. My sister tried to seize my teen's priceless gaming rig. Chaos ensued. I'm a 44-year-old mom married to my husband, who's 49, and together we've raised our 17-year-old son, Theodore. Theodore's a responsible kid. He worked a part-time job all summer, saved every penny, and built himself a high-end gaming PC from scratch. We're beyond proud of him. He researched every component and even learned basic troubleshooting to keep it running smoothly. Recently, my sister, her husband, and their 10-year-old son, Jake, moved in with us for what was supposed to be a short-term stay. My sister's always been a bit overbearing when it comes to Jake, insisting that everyone cater to his wants. Last weekend, Jake wandered into Theodore's room and zeroed in on that sleek setup with all the LED lights. He asked sweetly if he could play for a while, and Theodore gently replied, "Not right now, I'm still working on a project." Jake shrugged and left, but the very next day he tried again, this time with more insistence. I popped my head in and asked Theodore if he'd mind sharing his rig for an hour or two. He looked frustrated and said he didn't want to risk scratching the mousepad or messing up the settings he'd spent weeks fine-tuning. That's when my sister stormed down the hall, demanding it was extremely unfair to Jake not to let him play on it. She argued that since we were hosting them under our roof, Theodore had to share just like any good host would. I reminded her that Theodore bought every single piece with his own money and that it was his personal property. My sister blew up, accusing me of being a bad mother who couldn't teach kindness or sharing. Meanwhile, Jake threw a full-blown tantrum, yelling, stomping, and acting like a toddler denied candy. I stood firm and told my sister I wasn't about to force Theodore to give up something he'd earned. She scoffed, grabbed Jake's hand, and stormed off to sulk in her room. That night, I lay awake wondering if I'd been too harsh or if it was fair to protect Theodore's hard work. The next morning I filled my husband in, and he marched upstairs to set our sister straight on house rules and respect. Now she's given us the silent treatment for 2 days straight, and every corner of the house feels tense. I still believe Theodore shouldn't have to sacrifice what he saved up for, but am I the bad one here? Sometimes, standing your ground means saying no even if it means family tension. Hard work deserves respect. Finally, we close with a story of identity and independence. When one woman decided to choose her own name, it shattered the one connection she thought would last forever. I changed my name at 18 and my mom disowned me. Am I the bad? I hardly ever spoke to my mom in high school and flat out refused to introduce her to any of my classmates. Even though we went to the same school, I dreaded when she showed up at my locker or sat in the stands at games. It got extra awkward because she kept calling me by a nickname meant for my cousin Martina. She's 6 months older, and I was actually named after our Aunt Rebecca. I was Becca, but it never felt like mine. So I started going by Eleanor instead, and to my surprise, everyone in the family was totally fine with the switch. My brother had already been using his middle name for years, so when I turned 18, my dad helped me file the paperwork to legally change my name to Eleanor. My mom absolutely lost it. She threw a furious tantrum and swore she'd cut me off forever if I went through with it. I stuck to my guns, and by the time I hit 25, I'd effectively severed ties. I haven't spoken to her in years. Recently she tried texting me, claiming she's in therapy now and really misses her Becca, but I gently reminded her that Becca doesn't exist anymore. I told her I'd be there for Eleanor if she wanted a relationship, and after that, she hasn't reached out one single time. Am I the bad? Sometimes, drawing the line means facing the consequences. Whether it's family, friends, or even a beloved pet, standing your ground isn't always easy, but sometimes, it's the only choice you've got. Let me know which story shook you the most. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.